Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Putting together this webinar has been a really unique experience. When we created this concept, we were at the beginning phase of companies and labs shutting their doors. And today, while companies and employees are starting to open back up, one thing remains true. We are all trying to adapt to this new normal. And that really sets up our webinar topic today, maintaining critical testing in uncertain times. I'm Lauren Armstrong, Marketing Director for Quantum Analytics, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Brian DeVerse, Spectroscopy Product Manager for Quantum Analytics. Brian is responsible for developing, consulting, and supporting customer activities for spectroscopy product lines such as infrared, UV vis, XRF, XRD, combustion gas analysis, and more. Later, Brian will be joined by a special guest speaker, Chad Cobald of Bold View Capital, for a live Q&A on financing and leasing instrumentation. Before I hand the mic over to Brian, if you have any questions at any time during the webinar for either of our webinar speakers, please enter them into the questions module in the GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. We will answer those questions at the end of the webinar, but feel free to put those questions in at any time. Well, that is it for me. Brian, take it away.
Hey, all right. Thanks, Lauren, and good afternoon to everyone. I want to thank you all for taking a moment out of your day to spend some time with us on this webinar. Maintaining critical testing in uncertain times has either or may soon become an issue as we are forced to get the jobs done with fewer resources available. For those of you who are new to quantum analytics and our webinars, let me take a minute to let you know who we are. Our company, Quantum Analytics, has been doing business for nearly 40 years, offering best-in-class technology and services aimed to meet the specific application needs for our clients. Our mission at Quantum is to serve our clients to the best of our abilities and help them champion our analytical solutions to accomplish their goals. Your goals may include reducing costs, improving quality, ensuring productivity, or perhaps reduce or maybe even eliminate waste from your testing routines. Today, we are experiencing something that is truly unprecedented. As we turn to the news, we see headline after headline with stories of how businesses are locked down or have dramatically reduced headcount. And yet, industry is still trying to forge ahead, trying to find new ways to keep businesses open and continue to get the job done. We are challenged to meet the demands of our work with less resources available. The need for testing doesn't stop. In fact, the need for improved testing capabilities is going to increase. When I talk about critical testing, there certainly is a need for response testing for COVID-19. There's been a huge demand for testing of genomics, clinical diagnostics, pharma testing, personal protection equipment testing, and medical device testing. But that's not all what I'm talking about. There are other tests that are just as important to our day-to-day lives to keep us safe and healthy. The critical testing that I'm talking about affects more of our general population and the need to test goods that we commonly use every day. This means testing materials like industrial chemicals and petroleum, agriculture testing, food and feed testing, environmental testing, and consumer product testing. Well, and the list just goes on and on. Some of you may be needing help in one or maybe several of these issues. As lab managers and lab technicians, we are challenged to facilitate critical testing even though resources may be scarce. Some instruments that may have been hobbling along are now in need of support, but due to layoffs and travel restrictions, field services are on hold or at least for the interim, and a resolution for facilitating critical testing is still needed. Capital budgets are in question. You are being challenged to find areas where you can cut costs, not just for the interim, but for the long haul. This certainly becomes difficult for laboratories in need for improvements, and if you aren't sure where you can afford some of these changes in these current conditions. This is what I want to focus on today, highlighting some of the issues that we're facing and hopefully provide you with some ideas and resolutions your organization can benefit from. Outsourced quality testing. You might have noticed some longer than usual lead times from the testing lab that you normally use for some quality control tests. This may be affecting your business as these slowdowns have a negative impact on how fast you can move materials. Perhaps these delays have reduced confidence in your organization's ability to keep up with the outside demand. It may be time to consider mitigating some of this risk by bringing select instrumentation in-house for your own quality testing program. With today's modern instrumentation, quick startup and implementation is possible. You'll notice most modern instruments have a simplified, intuitive user interface, making learning curves shorter so that you can fast forward to results. Older, well, let's be nice and just call them legacy instruments. I don't know about you, but when I plan out my workday schedule, I certainly don't anticipate interruptions caused by instrument breakdowns. As good stewards of instrumentation, we use preventative maintenance visits to help improve instrumentation lifetime. But as instruments mature, PM visits are often replaced by unexpected break-fix service calls. Your lab may have a big old clunker of an instrument that needs on-site service personnel to keep the thing running. And getting someone to come on site during travel restrictions has become a challenging endeavor. Some engineers are having to drive from one location to the next because air travel is increasingly difficult. A common problem with old or legacy systems is the low availability of parts, making instrumentation uptime burdensome. In addition, keeping legacy systems alive is actually becoming less affordable. This is not because of increasing maintenance issues. I mean, that can certainly play a part, but also these instruments have a higher consumption rate of gases and utilities than newer instruments do. Here's where modern day instrumentation can be helpful. The performance and the reliability that comes from a new instrument can improve your day-to-day operation and in the long term, reduce your overall expenses. Many times I'll talk to my customers about how they can utilize a new instrument as a backup system to their legacy system in the beginning. They continue to use the legacy system as their primary instrument while their team becomes comfortable with the operation of a new instrument. After some time, they begin to phase out the legacy system to be used more as a backup role once that new system is fully integrated. Nowadays, some things we commonly use are getting smaller, and definitely that applies to some instrumentation. Recently, modern benchtop instrumentation has improved significantly. The gains in sensitivity, speed, and even throughput can be significant when compared to your older systems. An example of smaller benchtop systems that I'd like to highlight is from our partners at Bruker. Bruker's latest benchtop EDXRF and WDXRF systems offer cost-effective alternatives on updating many of the older floor model XRF systems. Cost savings are realized not only at the time of purchase, but also over the lifetime of the instrument. Improved instrument uptime is made possible due to simplified instrument design using fewer moving parts, which require ultimately less maintenance. The S2 Puma Series 2 EDXRF is rated the number one energy dispersive XRF in speed and sensitivity. It is the only fully automated EDXRF with an XY auto sampler capable of running a 20-position sample tray loaded with a matrix of different sample types from liquids to powders to solid discs or pucks. The easy touch operation with onboard computer allows for simplified sample runs for users with minimal XRF with minimal XRF training, and is the springboard for fast integration into your lab. Another instrument that I would like to highlight from our partners at Bruker is the D2 Phaser Benchtop XRD. The D2 Phaser is as capable as most modern floor-mounted XRD systems running powder XRD or Bragg-Montano geometry applications. These systems stand all on its own, saving lab space and utilities such as power and water. The D2 phaser is transferable, meaning that the instrument can be utilized as a shared resource and can be carted between departments or shipped to locations for remote projects. Now, don't let the size of this instrument fool you. The D2 phaser is a mighty machine for powder X-ray diffraction and is the #1 selling benchtop XRD in the world. As you take a look around at some of the legacy systems in your lab, you'll start to notice that some instruments need a lot of resources to keep them running, such as utilities, high purity support gases, necessary solvents, and the disposal of these solvents, sample preparation equipment and supplies, as well as hands-on time to operate it, draining your most valuable resource, your human resources. Modern lab instruments are sometimes smaller, usually much faster and often more efficient, requiring less demand on power and cooling. And many modern instruments can incorporate automation, greatly reducing the need for manual input while increasing sample throughput. An example of cost savings for customers who are using GC mass spec tools comes from our partners at Frontier Labs with the multi-mode pyrolyzer. The microfurnace multi-mode pyrolyzer from Frontier is a powerful addition to your GC and GC mass spec system, eliminating solvent extraction, filtration, and concentration. Any sample, including solids, can be analyzed as is, without the need for sample pretreatment or preparation. And you can fully automate the sample run using the microfurnace and its auto shot sampler, which will help increase time efficiency while improving data accuracy and precision by eliminating analyst to analyst variability. For those who may not know this, pyrolysis GCMS can analyze the insoluble materials that cannot be analyzed using LC, LCMS, GC, or GCMS. So, pyrolysis GCMS broadens the range of organic material characterization from gases to solids that are even insoluble in any solvent. This pyrolyzer also solves costs by delivering many analytical capabilities on one instrument. By coupling pyrolysis with GC mass spec, analysts can perform several different modes of operations, such as unknown identification, deformulation, contamination, and comparison analysis. From our partners at Marks International, we have a great example of how you can enhance your GC mass spec analysis with the addition of automated thermal absorption, offering unbeatable application versatility and outstanding productivity. The new Ultra XR from Marks provides automated, cryogen-free, unattended operation for up to 100 sample tubes. Enhanced sensitivity and sample stacking mode allows multiple samples to be combined on the focusing trap. Plus, you'll gain superior sample integrity and traceability, providing confidence in results through quantitative sample recollection of split flows, method compliance aided by leak testing, water management, and the addition of internal standards, and enhanced traceability of samples using barcodes and RFID tube tags. Now, if you're familiar with CHNS analyzers or TOC analyzers, you know how hands-on these systems can be in terms of maintenance and upkeep. Our partners at Elementar have done a tremendous job to make the upkeep of these instruments as simple and pleasant as possible. They have gone to great lengths in engineering and design to ensure maximum uptime with minimal frustration. One thing clients love about these cube systems is how accessible it is. Each of the major parts of the instrument, like detectors, electronics, the furnace, are accessible with removable side panels and doors. The connections are tool-free, allowing for the entire furnace to simply roll out for full access. Additional features like automatic ash removal, pre-packed reductor tubes, and a stable thermal conductivity detector play a part to ensure reliability and minimal downtime. Cost savings are realized with features like direct oxygen dosing, which limits the gas usage and prolongs the need to exchange gas cylinders. Also, many of our clients enjoy the quick and easy sample prep as as well as the cost savings that comes from using stainless steel reusable crucibles. The Unicube is one of Elementar's newer additions and has been rated #1 in accuracy with the largest weighing sample range. Each of these CHNS analyzers and TOC analyzers have the ability for high sample throughput automation, allowing for 24-hour unattended operation. Couple the auto sampler with the intuitive software interface, the ability to have full instrument control through remote access, and full integration into your LIMS. Our clients can spend minimal time in their lab, only needing to prep the samples, load the sample tray, and start the measurement. We have many happy customers who have realized the benefits that come from these Elementar analyzers, like our friends at JM Lord Inc., an agriculture services lab out of Fresno, California. They tell us that the ease of use and small footprint of the Elementar makes operating all four simultaneously extremely doable and enjoyable. No attention needed during analysis, and result consistency makes units of a foundation, makes these units a foundation of our operation, where they run on average about 600 samples a day. On-site support services. With many older instruments in need of repair, the ability to get them back online becomes a challenge. Many of these systems were designed before remote support access became a normal part of the instrument. Phone support is usually available, but that may only go so far, and often a field engineer is required to come on site to rectify the problem. How can this be facilitated if an engineer is not available or permitted to come on site? If they are permitted to come on site, travel delays are becoming an increasing problem, further prolonging your ability to provide mission-critical testing. Many modern-day instruments make self-care easy, providing self-diagnostics and guided resolution suggestions, and it's becoming more common for users to enable remote access to their instruments because the gateway is easily established and is quick to launch. An added bonus for smaller benchtop instruments is depot-level repairs. These are great options should an engineer not be available to come on site. You can simply pack up the instrument in its original crate or carton, ship it to the local depot repair shop for a quick turnaround because these parts and the experts are readily available to fix them. To maximize critical testing capability, instrument uptime is of the utmost importance. The only way this is going to be achieved is, in today's situation, is through innovative support and installation technical services. A highly confident crew with the ability to provide strong remote services is needed throughout the entire process. This includes application support and method development services. Our customers have access to a world-class support team. For example, our friends at Bruker provide step-by-step, easy-to-follow guided video instructions for new users to install their benchtop X-ray system right out of the box. Online support is available to new customers who need extra help, and virtual training courses are available for new users as well as a refresher course. High-level one-on-one remote application support and method development is key to getting your instrument started right away. And you may be at the point where you've identified that your lab is in need of a replacement instrument. However, the budget has been frozen or significantly reduced. Perhaps the budget's being shifted in efforts to keep operations going. Not all hope is lost. Many of our clients are still finding ways to acquire the instruments that they need to keep up with the demands of testing and potentially expand their capabilities to meet future challenges. This can be done through creative finance solutions. Instead of taking my word for it and trying to explain the benefits of using instrumentation leasing, I've invited my friend and one of our business partners, Chad Cobald from Boldview Capital, to talk with us today. So Chad is the business development manager at Boldview Capital, where he and his associates provide financing and leasing to the scientific community. Chad personally has over 25 years of experience in the financial industry, with the last 6 focused on scientific instrumentation financing. Chad, if you don't mind, we could share cameras here, and hey, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, looking good, buddy.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for joining
Good,
us.
good, good. Thanks for having me.
Right on. So, Chad, you've been having a lot of conversations lately. Maybe you could provide us with an overview of the market.
Absolutely. With COVID-19, Brian, there's just a lot of uncertainty out there. And that the businesses that I speak with, they want to keep as much cash as they can. And what that means is they are limiting capital expenditures, maybe getting rid of them altogether. This can be very problematic for your listeners. I believe the title of your webinar is Critical Testing. And when there's critical testing to do and they need to purchase new instrumentation, what are they going to do? Where I see the market going is towards financing and leasing. And I can tell you at Boldview, over the last probably 2 or 3 months, we have certainly seen an uptick in regards to inquiries on financing. And I think this is going to, or my personal belief is this will continue throughout 2020 and into 2021.
Wow. Well, okay. Well, so for those who are only familiar with leasing when it comes to their cars, can you summarize what it means for to finance and lease analytical instrumentation in today?
Sure. So there's 2 types of leases out there. There are capital leases, and then there's operating leases. With a capital lease, this is really what you would consider true financing, Brian. This is where, rather than purchasing the instrument outright, you're going to make payments over time, and at the end of that term, you would own the instrument outright. In regards to operating leases, this is very similar to your automobile lease that you mentioned.
Okay.
You're going to make payments over time, and at the end of that term, you don't own that instrument. You have a couple options. You can simply return it, or you can purchase it at its fair market value. And I will say also there are some accounting differences between operating leases and capital leases, but we're not going to get into that today.
All right. Well, then maybe you could tell us, is one type of lease better than the other?
No, they both serve their purpose. Probably 80% of our business is capital leases. And again, this is where they just want to spread payments out over time rather than purchasing for the instrument up front. But operating leases, they serve their purpose also. A couple ideas or a couple scenarios where they can be advantageous is one is if you have a project. Let's say you have a 2-year project out there. Rather than purchasing the instrument and at the end of that term or end of that project, you no longer need it, an operating lease could certainly be beneficial. It would have the lowest cost of ownership, if you will. Another situation would be with equipment that advances quite rapidly in regards to technology advancements. Rather than purchasing an instrument and have it be outdated in a few years, you could enter into an operating lease. In a few years, return it and enter into a new operating lease with the next generation of equipment, if you will.
Okay, well, that all makes a lot of sense then. So okay, when we were talking before, and you were mentioning that you always ask 2 questions regarding leases. Maybe you can reiterate that here for the audience.
Sure. So the first question I always ask is, why are you financing? And once we understand why somebody wants to finance, then we can determine the most appropriate type of lease for that client. And the second question that I always ask is, what do you want to make for a monthly payment? What can you afford, or what's your target? And once we understand what that monthly payment is, we can crunch some numbers and really back into well, the term of the lease, how long of a lease do we need? And also what kind of value or what kind of funding do we have to spend on the instrumentation in the lease?
All right. Well, yeah, I could certainly see how that can get things going and be helpful. But for some companies, this is a real shift in the way they acquire instrumentation. So, do you have any tips on how you can talk to your boss or your CFO about leasing or financing instrumentation?
That's kind of a loaded question, but if I was going to talk to my management team, I think the first thing I would do is to try and justify the need. For example, I think there's a lot of times that we want instrumentation or we would like to have equipment, and then there's other times that we truly do need it. So step one would be to justify that need for the instrumentation. Step two would be to do your homework, Brian. Go out and talk to a financing company and then be able to present those financing terms to your management team. In other words, hey, this is what the monthly payment would be. This is how long we'd have to make the payment, that sort of thing. I think that goes a long ways. And then finally, my suggestion would be to find ways to help reallocate funds to pay for that monthly payment. For example, today with COVID-19, we are not traveling as much. Maybe you could take funding from the travel budget and reallocate it towards that monthly payment.
Oh, yeah, so that's pretty smart. I never even thought about that. Okay, well, that's clever. So, all right, well, if my company has never leased or financed before, is it hard to get approval? Maybe you can go through and explain the process so that it's a little bit more clear.
Sure. I guess first off, 70% of all companies in the United States finances at least one piece of equipment every year, if not more. So I think the question is, you're more than likely your company has financed or leased, just maybe not in your department, but probably somebody in your company has. But the steps to finance are relatively streamlined and simple. The first step would be to reach out to a financing company. And if you have a vendor quote, a purchasing quote, what you can do is reach out to that vendor. Oftentimes they have partners with financing companies.
Mhm.
But once you get to that financing company, the first step is they're going to do a credit review on you. And based off that credit review, they will extend an offer. If that offer is accepted, then they will send out lease documents. Everything is done electronically. Upon e-signatures coming back to the financing company, they are going to place an order with the vendor. And when that vendor actually ships the instrumentation, that's when the lease will actually commence.
All right, seems pretty straightforward then. So, all right, so then that makes me think, instruments there,
You're
it's
freezing
working.
up on me, Brian.
Oh, is everything okay? Well, Chad, can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, good deal. All right, well, so I got one more question for you here. And this is kind of, now the instrument's working, it's in line, everybody's happy with it, and you're making steady
Sure.
payments and yada yada. And now you get to a situation where the instrument's starting to have a hiccup and it needs repairs. It's when it's in need of repair during a lease, what happens? How does this work?
Sure. So this question gets asked a lot, actually. The repairs and maintenance on a lease falls on the lessee, on the client. And think about, if you financed a car and it needs repairs, the first thing you're going to do is go to the manufacturer. And if it's under warranty, and they're more than likely going to fix that for free. But if it's out of warranty, you would get it serviced somewhere, and you would have to pay for that. And that's the same thing when you finance or lease equipment.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And the steps that you've outlined here, I think can be helpful to our friends today. At least lets them know that they have an avenue that they can explore and that they might be able to help them move forward to get the systems that they need to keep the critical testing going.
Sure.
So we're at the end of our presentation, and perhaps I've hit on one or two pain points that that your lab is currently facing, and I hope that we've given you some ideas on how you can address them. We discussed how bringing some of your critical testing in-house, using some modernized instrumentation, your lead time for test results will improve, and allowing for faster business decisions to be made and keep things running smooth. We've touched on how long-term testing costs. We discussed on how there's long-term cost savings, and these are realized because modern day instrumentation, they use fewer resources and are easier to maintain. We exposed you to the idea of using enhanced technologies such as pyrolysis and thermal desorption to expanding your current chromatography testing capabilities. And we also touched on how it's possible to keep up with demand while preparing for potential future cuts in resources using sample automation. And finally, we explored some ways that you can take advantage of creative finance solutions to acquire the instruments that you need to keep the critical lab testing strong and be prepared and thrive for what lies ahead of us. So I want to thank you all for staying with us throughout this presentation. That includes you, Chad. Thanks for joining us in the discussion today. If you have a few more moments, I'd love to open the discussion to the audience and allow them to ask us some questions. I hope that's cool with you.
Absolutely.
Right on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian and Chad. We do have a few questions for the group here, so if you don't mind, I'm going to dive right in. Brian, this first one looks like it's for you. Is it possible to replace a WD XRF with a benchtop XRF? Are there any disadvantages to doing this?
Well, actually, yes. So there certainly is some advantages to this, and it is possible. And when we're talking about replacing a WD XRF, I think what they're asking is a big old floor model type of unit. And this is where it really comes down to your application, and we need to go through and evaluate what you're trying to analyze, what are your goals of the analysis, what are the detection limits, what's the speed, and so on and so on. And if we feel that the benchtop solution is a good fit, meaning it meets the limits of detection, it meets the speed that you need, there certainly are great benchtop solutions, both energy dispersive and WD wavelength dispersive systems that are benchtop capable to help you improve your business.
Fantastic. The next question here is for you, Chad. Is there a limit to how long a lease can be? What is the longest term lease that you're providing?
Great question, Lauren. Normally, for a profitable, established company, the normal lease terms, or the farthest you can go out, is 5 years. If you are a startup company or have some credit problems, the normal longest lease would be about 3 years.
Fantastic. Brian, this next question is for you. This is about benchtop XRD. Can benchtop XRD be automated?
So yes, there are ways you can automate benchtop XRD systems. Like the unit that I showed you before, the D2 phaser, is a great instrument, and you actually have the ability to have a 6-sample auto changer on there, so you can prep 6 samples at a time, load it up, and press go, and come back and get your sample results. If there is a need for more automation, like in terms of an extreme amount, meaning you need more than 6 at a time, you need just all day long, there is another great instrument from our friends at Bruker called the D8 Endeavor, which is a fully automated sample tray type system, which can even have a unit connect to a what do they call that, a conveyor belt, so you can have a continuous feed of samples to keep your sample system going. So for sure.
Fantastic. Chad, we're going to throw a question to you now. Can you combine multiple instruments from multiple manufacturers under one lease contract?
The answer to that is yes. We can do that here at Boldview Capital, and there's other companies out there that can also do that, other financing companies. I will say that not all financing companies will do that. A lot of them have partnerships with certain vendors and can only finance that specific vendor's instrumentation. But the answer is yes, it can be done.
Great. Brian, this one is for you. Is it possible to use an XRD for elemental analysis?
That's okay. So that's a good question too. So XRD analysis is the mineral or crystalline composition of a sample, right? It's not elemental analysis technique. That's more of an XRF. And yes, it can it it can get you some information about these minerals, but in terms of actual elemental composition or the elemental analysis itself, no, that you're going to be doing yourself a bigger favor, a better favor by having an XRF for doing elemental analysis. Now, with XRD, you can assess information such as crystalline phases. You can do the amount of crystalline phases, see the amount of crystalline phases that are present. You even get like crystallite size, but not particle size. But again, there's complementary information that happens between those. But no, the answer to that question really is no. Your best bet is to use an XRF for elemental analysis.
Fantastic. And Chad, this one is for you. Can you finance 100% of the asset, or do you have to put any money down up front?
So this is probably the question I get asked most often. If you are a established, profitable company, normally you can finance 100% of that asset. Again, if you are a startup company or if you have some credit issues, a financing company will normally ask for a security deposit or a down payment.
Awesome. Brian, you had a slide that mentioned CHNSO analysis. This person currently has an older CHN analyzer, and they're asking if it's possible to analyze all 5 elements on one analyzer.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, so the unit that I think I had on the slide was the Unicube, and that one has the capability of having all of those elements of CHNS all in one measurement shot. And without the need any kind of reconfiguring of the instrument. There's another one that Elementar has called the Vario EL that can do the same. Now, when it comes to running oxygen analysis, there is a little bit of a manual exchange in order to do oxygen, but majority of the customers that I work with are mostly require CHNS and oxygen usually occasionally. But yes, definitely doable all on one instrument, saving you some cost of having to have a separate instrument for those other elements that might be important to your business.
Great. And Chad, last one for you. Are there advantages of working with a leasing company compared to just getting financing through a local bank?
Could you repeat that, Lauren?
Yeah, sure. Are there any advantages of working with a leasing company compared to just getting financing through a local bank?
Sure. So when you work with a leasing company and you are again, I'll go back to this established profitable company, a leasing company is not going to require any, normally, they're not going to require any down payment. But banks, even if you have a relationship with that bank or financial institution, they are normally going to ask for some sort of down payment. The other thing is with leasing companies, this process is more streamlined. For example, a lot of financing companies finance multiple leases in a month, where a bank or a financial institution might finance one piece of equipment every few months. So leasing companies would certainly understand the process, and it would be more streamlined and probably quicker, if you will.
Great. All right, I think that is it. I want to give Brian a virtual high five for presenting today and sharing some of his expertise. And a big thank you to you, Chad, for giving us better insight into instrument financing and leasing. Before we let you go, I wanted to share some additional resources with you. Thank you, Brian. We have two upcoming webinars I encourage you all to attend. Next week, our partner Marks International will be a guest speaker for a webinar on advancements in thermal desorption for environmental contaminants analysis. And then on June 23rd, we will be hosting a webinar on visual defect identification using FTIR microspectroscopy, and that's with our partner at Zytec. And if it's an on-demand webinar you're looking for, I encourage you to browse our library of recorded events. These are found on lqa.com/resources. And one last thing, as a registered guest, you're all going to receive an email within the next few days with a link to this recorded webinar. All right, I hope you guys all had some fun. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.